Rumors spreading round United Texas town about the shack outside the game. And you know what I'm talking about. Just let me know if you wanna go to that whole mile on the range. They got a lot of nice girls.
Hey, welcome back everybody to Backseat Broadcast. I'm your host Eric Elkins. We are right in the thick of it, week 6 of season 8. Continuing on here at Barber Motorsports Park. Should be a good one with the fixed Ferrari GT3s. This very demanding circuit, very technical. These things are way overpowered for this type of track, so it'd be nice to see how they negotiate this little skinny thing. Take a quick look at the practice times everybody's laying down. Apparently we have an extra 20 minutes of practice. I don't quite know what is happening there. It appears, well, we did have an extra race lobby available. But, we had to jump into this one. Looks like perhaps our admins out there have elongated our practice time a little bit out there. So we got 19 minutes on the clock. So I might hang out for a little bit and be back. But feel free to watch on and practice. Let's look at the track temperature. Ooh, 106 at the moment. And all right, everybody, we are back and we are ready to go qualifying here at Barber Motorsports Park. Got a nice grid of 20 or so drivers out there. It looks like we're doing that open qualifying that I love so much out there. Got everybody exiting the pits at the same time, trying to get that track position in. You see Kevin San Diego way out in front, trying to get that track position. I wonder if he'll have a start from the back penalty yet again. If he's just going to help clog up qualifying here for us. Actually, I don't believe he was able to get up there. Well, looks like we have a spinner there. It's James Bunter here. But he's just deciding to stay there. I believe he won last week's race, so he will not be able to grid this time. He will be in the way of Brian Frick as he heads out. Kent Kruger out on the track. Pay no attention to those. Those are not going to be laps to consider at all when all of the real hot laps come in. Out here on a hot lap in a cool old Polaroid looking livery. Last week's race was pretty junk for him, so he's got some points to be making up this week. Gordon Mitchell out there in a matrix paint of sorts. It's like a low pressure paint job. Terrible down the straights with all that track. Brian completes a hot lap, and that's what we're looking at. 1:21.7, pretty dang quick out there. Steve Zerapo into second for the time being with a 1:22.6. Daniel Towell fastest overall as he ducked out, I think, like a lap early last week, so he's going to be able to start from that pole position if he can retain it with a 1:21.389. Jonathan Cooper into third, Russell Abraham into fifth, followed by Michael Harney and Justin Atchison. Thomas Wright is in the incorrect class. We have to adjust him in just a moment as we have some more guys coming across the line. Corey Mitchell onto the third row with a 1:22.9, and then Chris Miller into the top 10. Marginally better lap by a few 100ths. Russell up to third place from fifth with a 1:22 flat. Only two drivers out on track who have not set a lap yet are Kevin San Diego and John Miller. might have finished third last week, nullifying his ability to get up there. So he's probably dipping a wheel off track every lap. Carlos Lopez Jr. on track. And he's got 10 minutes to set some times. And Ken Kruger on the board with a 123 flat, putting him in 7th position. And these things all loaded down with fuel at the moment. It might just be best. John Miller is up to 3rd, and Thomas Wright into 12th, followed by Brian Frick in 14th place. And these things are all loaded down with fuel on a fixed setup. You have 15 minutes essentially to race out there and sort of not destroy your tires. Steve Zeropo, we saw there, coming across the line in 6th place and going off track. Andrew Durkis is on track as well. He's actually off track at the moment. Kevin Sandiego grids in 3rd position. We'll see if he has a has to start from the back, but I think he might be safe. Don't think he made it to the top 3 last race. Chris Miller down in 13th place, moving himself up a little bit. Andrew Durkis still owes us a lap, as does Carlos Lopez Jr., who is on a hot lap now. Troy Banks into the top 10. So the first 2 rows in the sub 122s. It's a lot of the usual suspects up there. James Bunter, of course. He was just sitting on track, but he's decided to come back to the pits. And let's do a quick lap with 2nd place here, Brian DeVries. And coming up over there, no lift needed. And that's going to be very difficult as we come out 2 by 2 there, as cars get a little loose out there. Somebody else sitting on the side of the track. It looked like perhaps Brian Frick. Keeping it pretty nice and tight through there. Oh, keeping it to the left. Taking all the curbs necessary and still getting it turned in time. Not drifting too wide, keeping it on track. Back over to the right-hand side. And weaving through here, getting a little loose there, but holds it together. And one more time for him, avoiding the curbs this go around a little bit. And that long tightening right-hander to bring it on home. Very tricky final section, you can't really let loose of it at all. Carlos Lopez Jr. comes across the line into the top 10 with a 122.855. Andrew Durkis maybe just a little bit late to practice. Still figuring out the setup here. Kent Kruger with a neat old livery. And that's a neat way to end a lap too. But these tires seeming to go away from everybody, and probably the track is as well, as everybody's out on it at the same time. We shall see, though, as nobody's setting any green sectors out there, but we are seeing some changes on the board there. Let's check it out as we have Michael Harney actually taking away that 10th place position. And Brian having a bit of an off track here into the wall, really pushing it out there. And just under 5 minutes to go here in open qualifying. Oh, and somebody with a, looked like Chris Miller there with a big off track. He's returned to the pits though. Russell Abraham doing pretty well up here in 5th position. Usually goes a little unnoticed at times. It's great qualifying here. Don't forget, we are going to have that pit stop, so we saw Steve Zirpo practicing that pit entry. Andrew Durkis does set a time. He's up to 14th with 1:24.3. I think last week's podium winners were James Bunter, Greg Tassos, and Matthew Smotherman. Now that I think of it, and Daniel actually able to break that 1:21 mark. Really killer lap there. And John Miller going above Kevin Sandiego for that inside to T1 on the 2nd row. And Carlos Lopez under a little bit of traffic here. I think that's Corey Mitchell just ahead of him. Under 2 minutes to go. This will be their final lap out there. Troy Banks unable to go any faster. Not really any sort of draft to be accomplished here. Sort of seems like medium and low speed corners through the first half, and then sort of medium and high speed with that final low speed corner at the end with a little pit straight. And a few small back straights, but that's about it. Thomas Wright getting himself off of the back of the grid into 16th. Here come Corey and Carlos across the line. Doubt either of them were able to better their initial time though. And with 20 seconds to go, hopefully we will see everybody come into the pits at their appropriate times. John's coming around the final turn to complete a lap, but I don't think it's going to be good for anything on the front row. Steve Zeropo has one green sector out there, but it's a 6/10 of a gap to get him up there, and he only has 1/10 in that lap. Actually, we are still live qualifying. Anybody on a hot lap can finish it. Here comes Carlos with only one green sector. He's got less than a tenth to make up on Michael Harney ahead of him. Oh, and he's jumped straight up into the top 10 with a 1:22.428 to get him onto the fourth row. Well done, Carlos. Kevin Sandiego still moving out there with a couple green sectors, actually. But it does not look like this lap is actually going to count for him. As he decides to come into the pits. 109 degrees out there on track at the moment. We have 40% fuel limit, mandating that pit stop about 20 to 25 minutes into the race. 17X will get you, not a DQ. I don't know why it says that. Why does it still say that? Let's change it. Pit lane penalty. Anyways, so let's take a quick peek over at the championship standings. Voila, Matthew Smotherman up top. 320 points above, or not above, but just 16 points above John Miller, and Greg Tassos is going to start at the back of the stack. Jonathan Cooper in fourth place, Daniel Towell in fifth. Daniel, of course, your pole sitter today as we peek at the grid. Oh, isn't that fun? Who needs all that in their face, though, right? Let's do something about that. How about we just pull up the grid? Hey, it's Daniel Towell on pole position. That's Brian DeVries next to him. Then we got John Miller and Kevin Sandiego on row 2, followed by Russell Abraham and Jonathan Cooper in the top 3 there we saw. For points, Carlos Lopez Jr. we saw shoot up to 7th, followed by Steve Zeropo, Corey Mitchell, and Kent Kruger. Maybe Steve did have a good time and get himself up there. Kent Kruger finishing the top 10. Michael Harney's followed by Troy Banks, Justin Atchison, Andrew Durkis, Chris Miller, Tom Wright, Brian Frick, James Bunter was our winner last week, and we'll start from the pits along with other podium winners, Greg Tassos and Matthew Smotherman. Kelly Greenhope, Bjorn Benches, and Ty Johnson hopefully join us for the race. And the grid's starting to fill up, just missing a couple drivers. And we're ready to get moving out here. Be very interesting to see as they come over this crest if they can really keep it together on those cold tires 2x2 as everybody drifts over to the left over that blind crest. I'm interested. We had some interesting accidents there in the past. And I love all the weird art that there is in the middle of Barber. There's all sorts of little hidden gems around there. I'd love to go if it weren't in Bama. I'd love to go. And the pace car is in. All eyes on Daniel as we're ready to get going here in our Ferrari race at Barber Motorsports Park. And he's off once he's through. Brian's going to tuck in behind him for that draft. Kevin Sandiego takes the outside racing line. And it looks like, a couple spinners at the back there. We're going to check back in on them in just a moment. But we got some guys going side by side. Looks like Russell Abraham with an off track there as Corey Mitchell is gaining places rapidly. Troy Banks with a spin at the back. Looks like Steve Zirapo is next as he goes to the outside. So some early accidents out there we're going to take a look at. Back up top, Daniel Towell is leading from Brian DeVries and Kevin Sandiego has made up one position on John Miller, who's right on his tail. Corey Mitchell's 2.5 back, leading a pack of Russell Abraham, Carlos Lopez Jr., Kent Kruger, Justin Atchison, and James Bunter already into the top 10. Greg Tassos has followed him right through the pack. Matthew Smotherman is a few more places back. He's up 6. So through the tightening right-hander for the first time, everybody keeps it together. Very close racing out there. We saw a crash from Chris Miller here, and he's on the inside lane. It looks like getting a little late onto the brakes there, and that rear end just not agreeing with him. It looked like he was tagged by somebody else. I didn't quite see who that was. It might have been Brian Frick, I believe. And we saw Troy Banks coming over this hill here. I thought that rear end was going to get loose. And he got it moving again. Oh, and there's a little action back here, as it looks like Brian DeVries gets through his, maybe that's Matthew Smotherman actually getting punted there. We're going to go through the list of all the excitement we have out there. Well, we saw Steve Zirapo sliding off track here. Oh, and it looked like Corey Mitchell just gave him the little tap of death into the grass on lap 1. There's a signature move around here. Troy Banks with another off-track incident here. Oh, and we're getting quite the light show at the same time. God, it's very angry with you, Corey. He's throwing bolts of lightning out there, and here's Andrew Durkis with an off track of his own, but is he going to be able to keep hold of it? And I think this is not what happened to dear old Matthew Smotherman. Here's Brian DeVries braking really early and just going completely off the track. It looks like he's going to have to retire that car. No, he keeps it moving for some weird reason. I'm not exactly sure what's happening, but he's being very kind to everybody else. That is what happened to Matthew Smotherman, as he just got beat around. It looked like Thomas Wright. Let's bring that one back and see what had happened. And Brian just slowed down. You can see him in the distance there, re-entering the track, and here he comes. And he gets a little loose and comes right into Matthew Smotherman and spins him and gives him the extra boot. chaotic start to the race. Very strange indeed. John Miller with the fastest lap there. We see it looked like Justin Atchison going around the outside of Greg Tassos. And Kelly with a decent spin here. Oh, he gets double pegged out there, and his car is not in good condition after that at all. It looks like he has jumped to the pits as a result. Steve Zirapo with an accident here. What had happened to him? Rewind that tape. As the two guys in front of him are battling, and they also just seem to stop it on the track. That's Troy Banks and Thomas Wright, who never really got out of the way, as Troy Banks probably wanted to turn in there. 4X goes to each of those two drivers, though. So that may come into effect for a pit lane drive-through penalty later on. Daniel Towell not completely out of the woods, but he's got 1.5 second lead above Kevin San Diego, who got past I guess that was Brian DeVries up there in second place, who just got out of it completely and had that accident with everybody. So Kevin is up to second place. John is in third, with Kevin with Kevin just ahead of him. Just ahead of Justin here, Brian DeVries from second spot on the grid, currently sitting in 10th. And then Greg Tassos just ahead of him. Also very quick. Everyone's going off track right there, as we see 2 or 3 drivers do that in a row. And Brian DeVries with another off track. Final turn that closes on you. Here's Kent Kruger on the inside. He's got Greg Tassos, who's going off track yet again, really sending it out there, almost coming back into Kent, and managing to gather it up in time, and still battling to the inside of him. And Barber really providing quite some entertainment for these very, very fast cars. And Brian has another incident out here. Coming out of T3 maybe into T4. He eventually decides that's going to be enough, and he's retired that car. Corey Mitchell having a great race. He's up 5 positions into 4th. Let's actually go on board with Corey. As that green flag flies, he always seems to pick up 3 or 4 positions. That's Russell Abraham, I believe, just ahead of him here. He already knows what he wants to do on the inside. That's 2 positions up already. Let's watch him from the green flag here. Oh no, that's Russell Abraham on the left there. and then that was Steve Zirapo that I think he caught on lap 1. That's a great way to pick up an extra position on the opening lap. Greg Tassos still on Kent's bumper. He's going to try it to the inside this time. I think he might have it done. No, he doesn't. As Kent managed to keep all that speed in there to the second apex. And Greg knows he needs to make that move pretty clean out there. James Bunter up to 6th here. He's up 12 positions so far. He's currently about 7 seconds ahead of Greg, who he gridded next to and fought all of last race. And there he goes on Ken Kruger to the inside. Kevin not letting Daniel run away with it. And Thomas Wright having an off track back there. But most of the drama has subsided. Here's Steve Zirapo and Troy Banks having a little off track there, as we see everybody doing these days. That's what the kids are up to. And now that we are finally over the first lap excitement, we are 11 minutes into the race and counting the clock until those pit stops come and shake things up a little bit more. And on board here with James, you can see just how difficult it is to pass. A very skinny racetrack, really only one line to take, as there's all these weird cambers. Off camber first turn right there, as you see. A lot of these cresting turns where you lose a lot of that grip and you're just sliding all over this track. It's really just about running your own race and making sure you're running as best as possible. Making sure you're getting the most of that track as Russell does the Corey to Corey. And James is going to clear both of them at the same time. What a move that was. And Corey is trying to decide the best way to get back out onto track. And Steve Zirpo is now just a few seconds off there. So I say no penalty. I say no penalty. Justice was done. Just as long as somebody now murders Russell, right? Isn't that how it's supposed to work? Come on, stewards. An eye for an eye leaves us all starting from the pits next race. Here is Steve Zirpo down in 12th. He's got Troy Banks just ahead of him, and Corey Mitchell is under threat. Daniel now 2 seconds up the road. Kevin definitely fighting for second, a lot harder than he's fighting for first. As John Miller is no slouch, and if he can just get close enough to tap him in, they might have a 1-2-3 tonight for Genesis. But Kevin wants to spoil their photo shoot. Let's watch that Russell crash one more time. I honestly think he just tried to slow it down as much as possible. And tried to avoid him, but it was just too late. And Daniel with a little off track, it looked like there. No harm, no foul. Thomas Wright with a bit of an incident here, as we see so many people going off track there, but just not able to gather it once he came back on the black stuff. And Steve Zirpo has found his way past Troy Banks. It's 1.4 up the road to Corey Mitchell. And Daniel's losing time. It's now 1.2 back to Kevin San Diego. Yeah, Daniel's last lap of a 123 flat is not going to be fast enough. He's going to have to turn it up a little bit. Oh no, and a little bit further back on the pit straight, very odd indeed. We see Troy Banks having an incident coming around the final turn. Oh, and yeah, just tried to make that turn perhaps a little bit bigger than it was. And when he finally got to the pointy end of that turn, I think those right wheels were going onto the grass. And oh, here's Thomas Wright with a very dangerous maneuver. But Does very well to go off track the opposite direction this time and gather it. And Kevin Sandiego taking that gap to 1 second. Starting to put a little bit of distance between himself and John as well. Greg Tassos now going to the inside of Carlos Lopez Jr. He just lets him by essentially on the straights there. Doesn't want to fight him as Russell Abraham is next up in 5th. And a couple people into the pits already. On the low end, a 10.4 for Andrew Durkis. Looks like 12.2 and 12.4 are the other times we have set already. 20 minutes on the board. And Justin Atchison pulling up to Kent Kruger. I've seen a lot of overtaking here for a track that's pretty dang difficult to even keep a car going. Let alone go too wide through some of these things. Oh, that gap is under a second. Don't get a lot of instances to figure it out wheel to wheel. And Michael Harney has a crash as he comes out of the pit lane. Very odd indeed, a very dangerous one indeed. He does manage to find some runoff area though. Greg is right on the back of Russell now. And the top three are now stuffed into about 1.5 seconds together, so good to see there. Nice close racing. Should be won or lost in the pit stop. Hopefully it's pretty even. We get to see some more great racing out there. Greg really applying the pressure now. They all elect to stay out. John Miller may be doing a little bit of fuel conservation, thinking he might be able to jump ahead of Kevin if he just stays in that draft for long enough. And there's no real long straights to get out of a little bit early. Just be smart with those shifts. And Greg decides to take that opportunity to get out of Russell's hair and come in for his stop. 12.1, so it looks like 12 seconds is what we're aiming for tonight's pit stop. And Greg is back out on track and some real clean air there. Put in some laps. And everybody staying out again. It's going to be 25 minutes on the board by the time they come around again. So I imagine that this will be their final lap out there. But here is our scientific constant out there, Troy Banks. And Michael Harney is sitting and staying back in the pits. is Matthew Smotherman? Are you just having connection issues? You are just having connection issues. Okay. It's going to be about 26 on the board by the time Matthew comes back in. Despite that early first or second lap spin he was involved with, Brian DeVries. And looks like Daniel and John are going out again. So they must feel there's one more lap in there. Kevin Sandiego gets out ahead of this little group here. Steve Zirpo is really closed up to Corey now. Russell Abraham currently in 8th here. And there's Greg Tassos that he wanted to be out of the pits, and Greg has gotten that done easily with that out lap. Or I shouldn't say easily, but 1.2 seconds above Russell, despite Russell's shorter pit stop. So Kent, Corey, and Steve all to come in, and of course Troy Banks as well. Coming around that final turn now is Kevin Sandiego. Daniel is already at pit exit. Where is John Miller? John is coming out as well. Where is he's going to be ahead of Kevin? That is going to be crucial for him. Here's James Bunter and Greg Tassos. Was it? No, that's Brian Frick just ahead of him. Excuse me. Brian Tassos is still coming around there. Steve Zirpo and Corey Mitchell and Ken Kruger all in that fight, exiting pit road now. Appears Steve has been able to jump Ken Kruger, who spent a while in the pits. But Corey with a 9.8 second stop. Matthew Smotherman with a 5 second stop. Daniel Towell with 9.7. That's how he was able to stay out ahead surely. And that pit stop has ended up stretching everybody out just a little bit. And James Bunter here now 13 seconds off of making a Genesis 1, 2, 3 podium. And Matthew coming back in for a longer stop now to fill up that tank all the way. And we have just under 10 minutes to go here. John appears to be pushing it pretty hard, trying to catch back up to Daniel, put him under a little bit of pressure. Kevin slowly but surely actually dropping behind John at the moment, resigned to third place it appears. James still 15 seconds off of the podium setters Greg Tassos. Having a good race as well, but sitting there a mile ways back. Russell Abraham again having a quiet yet good race in 6th place here, getting good points. Carlos doing himself wonders with that late qualifying run, staying in 7th. Corey Mitchell is up to 8th, ahead of the man he took it from, Steve Zirapo. Kent Kruger rounding out the top 10. Justin Atchison has gained 2 spots, and despite a double pit stop, Matthew Smotherman is up 8. Troy down 1 spot. Andrew Durkis staying in his grid spot of 14th. And up top, John Miller chipping away at that lead of Daniels, down to 1.6 from 2 seconds. So I feel like he has a little bit of pace on him. He can close that gap by the end of the race. Now only a second between Daniel and John. So John finding some late pace here. Daniel's definitely got to be feeling it. See Andrew Durkis with a big crash back here. And he goes off track at everyone's favorite corner. Ooh, and just about takes Russell with him. And with just over 4 minutes remaining on the clock, John Miller has found some very, very late pace against teammate Daniel Towell in the closing laps. And unfortunately, it kind of is the only race on track at the moment, but if there is going to be one race on track, I'd want it to be this one. Up top, John against Daniel. And Daniel just hasn't been able to respond at all. As that gap of 2 seconds has come down in the last couple minutes or so. John just seems to have so much more control of this car. Andrew Durkis still having all sorts of off-track troubles out there. John really able to put some daylight in between himself and Kevin, who's now 3 seconds back. He just seems to have so much more grip in this Ferrari than anybody else, especially Daniel. We're watching ahead and through that final turn. John on the gas way earlier and more confidently than Daniel. Let's see if he's going to try to study Daniel real fast and see what corner might be a good move, as it looks like we'll have one more race lap after this one. And oh my, what happened to Andrew Durkis? I think that was the end of his troubles there. And here Daniel's going to take us around for our final lap. And for all the speed John's had in the last few laps here, he looks fairly resigned to second place. Doesn't seem to be too late on the brakes anywhere. We're really pushing it too hard now. And around the final carousel for the final time, Daniel's gonna lead the whole thing and bring it on home. after 29 laps of racing here at Barber. Congratulations, Daniel, John Miller, and Kevin Sandiego for that podium win. Corey Mitchell has lost that position to Steve Zeropo in the closing stages. Matthew Smotherman trying to pass Justin Atchison. Let's see where Steve was able to do it. Oh, Corey made it extra easy on him there. And Matthew trying to pick up one more spot before the end of the race. Is he going to be able to do it with one more to go? It doesn't appear so, even though he gave it his everything. Congratulations to those 3 podium winners. They put on such a good display today. I am so thankful for it. You can see some of the fun art that they have here at Barber Motorsports. Weird spiders and ants, lions and tigers. All right, let's run down those race results. We're just waiting on, there we go, Andrew Durkis to complete his lap. Daniel Towell won the race, followed by John Miller. Got up 1 position to second, followed by Kevin Sandiego completing the podium spots. Then we had James Bunter, Greg Tassos, Russell Abraham, and 6, Carlos Lopez Jr., Steve Zeropo above Corey Mitchell, and Kent Kruger rounding out the top 10. Justin Atchison was followed by Matthew Smotherman, Troy Banks, Brian Frick, Andrew Durkis, Thomas Wright, and Chris Miller out there. Let's update those point standings for everybody. Of course, broad strokes as always. That sees John Miller up to the top above Matthew Smotherman, who had that double pit stop race. Greg Tassos remains in 3rd place. Daniel moving up, as does Kevin. As always, y'all know the drill. Make sure to hit that thumbs down button, unsubscribe. Make sure you hit the bell an even number of times. We will see you right back here on Thursday for the Supercars around this very small racetrack. It will be just so comical. I can't wait to do it. We will see you then. Take it easy, everybody.